So it's pretty hard to generate a keyword list without the use of keyword tools, just using your brain. But it is a good exercise nonetheless. The combination of being able to have access to these kinds of keyword tools, having access to sites to see what people are talking about, is of course an extra more powerful way to make sure you're being complete in your keyword brainstorming. But one of the reasons I put the exercise in here is because in particular the sort of the problem-related keywords are ones that end up getting missed by marketers when they start to think about, what keywords should I be putting in there. They always get the product keywords in there, and they always get the what we do keywords in there, but they sometimes forget the what problem do we solve keywords and phrases. And those can be really powerful because they tend to capture people right at that instant when they're having that problem and they need a solution. Did anybody have any questions after going through the arduous exercise?
What are your thoughts on if you were to play off of the brand equity of another company in your space? So that if you're a startup that has a new cola and you want to try and capture those who are looking for a Coke, would you be blacklisted, or is that something? What are the search engines? Do they frown upon that?
The trademark issues, of course, you need to look at them from two different perspectives. One is looking at it from the organic SEO perspective, and the other is looking at it from the paid search perspective. So from the organic SEO perspective, the engines currently don't care one way or the other. Like they just assume that you put the content there, they assume that content is fine. Where it can be a problem, or where it had been a problem in the past, is where the content was not visible on the page and it was only in meta tags or title tags. Because then a court case found that there was potential consumer confusion because at that point in time it was possible for the page to come up high for something and it not actually be in the content. Now that would be more difficult to happen, that's sort of a moot point anyway. But the point is that if you're going to do that, there's no guarantee that the brand holder won't sue you. So you just need to be careful with respect to doing it in such a way that you could make a plausible case for fair use. Like you were comparing your cola to their cola. 4 out of 5 heavy cola drinkers prefer Acme Cola. Whatever it was, maybe there was some research that was done, some study, some comparison, half the calories, twice the calories, whatever it was, that kind of content, it would be difficult. Not that they couldn't sue you, because they can sue you for anything, but it's more difficult for them to make a case when there's some sort of editorial context in that. On the paid side, you can buy other people's keywords as long as you don't use the keywords in the copy of the ad. That's the Google rule, and I think the Yahoo rule is somewhat similar, but it relates more. That relationship actually continues down to the landing page as well. The landing page needs to be relevant for the brand that you purchase, which is not a problem, not an issue in Google. So you would need a comparative advertising page on Yahoo. I don't think you would need a comparative advertising page on Google. The challenge there really is just if the brand is owned by somebody with deep pockets, they basically have a bunch of in-house lawyers that have nothing better to do than to issue cease and desist letters and sue people. So this just gives them a good thing to do, keeps their October busy. So you just have to be really careful with respect to, when you engage in that kind of behavior, it can be very lucrative, but it can also be a little bit dangerous. Where it's sort of more of a gray zone is for authorized channel partners. If you're authorized to sell Coke and you're a retailer, or you're authorized to sell Nike and you're a retailer, using that brand name, which you're authorized to do, sometimes still pisses off the brand holder because you might be better at SEO than they are, if they haven't bothered to do anything yet. So you just have to sort of take that with a grain of salt, when you engage in leveraging the power of somebody else's brand to your benefit. Just, know what you're getting yourself in for. It can be highly lucrative, but it can also be a little dangerous.
It seems like you would stay away from it if you were advising someone.
I would make a case-by-case evaluation. We've got some clients who've done very well, actually, embracing it, but they tend to also have deep pockets. So when both sides have deep pockets, then they don't like to waste each other's money as much. But when one side is small and the other side is big, when it's David and Goliath, it's much more likely for there to be litigation. So when they're both huge, then it's more likely to just be a duke it out situation. So even though Geico lost the majority of the decision, they sued Google because Google sold Geico as a keyword to other insurance companies. The finding of the court was that you could run the ads as long as they didn't have the keyword in the ad. But then Geico, when that decision came out, said anybody who buys our keyword will just sue you directly. So that's they just threatened, regardless of the merit of the case, almost we'll just sue you anyway. So will Geico sue Progressive if Progressive buys the keyword? I don't know. There's two deep-pocketed people. Maybe the lawyers need to justify their existence. I don't know. So we'll move on. One thing you have to think about when you're doing keyword research is not just all the positive keywords and all the keywords that you want, but there are sometimes keywords that when combined with your existing keywords you don't want. And depending on whether you're B2B or B2C, or depending on whether you're a value player or a service player, you may not want words like cheap or discount, particularly in a paid campaign where it could potentially be the wrong kind of visitor for you. Or you may want those words if you do, in fact, play in that space. If you think about players like eBay, and eBay would love to use words like used or refurbished or whatever, because a lot of the products that end up in an eBay would be related to that. Content is king, really. It's sort of, you can't say it enough, because the search engine spiders are on a mission. When they come out to visit your site, they want to identify all the great content you've got. So if you don't have good content, then there's not a lot for the search engine spiders to see and categorize and classify. So the more quality content you have and the more diverse that content is, the more broad your net will be. So as you generate more and more content that's related to your business, the wider your net is cast and the more searches you have an opportunity to come up high for. So what do the search engine spiders do? They find the good content, they identify it, separate it from the extraneous information on the page, they grade it for clarity, they extract the essence of the content on every page, try to figure out what is that essence, then they grade the content for reputation of the source of that content. Then they want to understand the context of that content. How does it sort of fit into all the other information that we've got? Are these reviews or ratings, or is this editorial content, or is it coming from a company? Many of the search engines then assign your site to a community. In other words, well, where is this? What is it? What kind of information is this? Travel information, legal information, software-related information. Then they catalog the URL of that content as well. And they want to come back and revisit the content from time to time to see if it's fresh. So that's sort of what the spider's doing. So what is search engine friendly design? How do you get the search engines to come to your site? What is good SEO? It's about having the right content that your prospects and customers will want to read. It's about making sure that your content is readable and legible to the search engine spiders, making sure the spiders can find that content and understand its content and context. Then you have to convince the search engine that your content in a tie situation is just a little bit better than all the other content that looks almost exactly like it. Because when you think about I think it's between billions and trillions of pages out there that Google has cataloged and Yahoo has cataloged and MSN has cataloged, it's not always clear what the best result is. So often you're in a situation where really it boils down to a tiebreaker. And that tiebreaker is often something which we'll just call reputation. In Google, reputation is actually measured by a concept called PageRank. And what PageRank is, some people think it relates to the fact that it's a web page, when in fact it was just named after Larry Page, who was the co-founder of Google. And it's just a nice joke for them that had two meanings. So, once you sort of evaluate your current site, try to figure out what you're doing wrong, you can sort of get a sense of what your upside potential is. Go ahead.
Can you explain that last point a bit more when you're talking about grading content?
You mean The reputation portion of it? I actually have a couple of slides on that. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on it earlier. Your upside potential really relates to how well your site is doing from an SEO perspective now. So it's sort of like you want the perfect storm, right? You want to have all those things happening. You know, good content, content's findable. It's easy for the search engines to understand the difference between your content and other content, and it's easy for the search engines to understand why your reputation as an organization should be transferred onto this content and therefore have it score more highly. That's how you get the visibility within the search results that you actually deserve. Occasionally, you might even get more visibility than you deserve, but usually you'll get the visibility that you deserve. If all your competitors actually are not getting the visibility that they deserve, and you actually do just a better job at SEO than they do, you can actually get sort of more than your fair share, that's sort of fun, when getting more than your fair share. So given that content is so important, how do you approach the generation of that content or the tweaking of the existing content that you have to try to make it search engine friendly? Well, you want to make sure that your copy is sufficient so the search engine can understand what a page is about. So each page should have at least 200 to 250 words on it. Could you get away with 150 or 100? Yeah, you could probably get away with it. Could you still do well with 3,000, a veritable article or thesis? Yeah, you can still do well with those too. It's really more important just to sort of at least come close to that on the lower bound, just because the less content there is, the more challenging it is for a search engine to understand what the page is about, to understand the true context of that page. Decide whether or not there are places within your content where bullet-pointed copy makes sense. And this actually becomes great for both the human visitors to your site and the search engines, because it sort of sees that and it understands, okay, here are some really isolated phrases that excuse me, tell me a lot about what this page is about. The reason you want compelling copy on there is because once the visitor actually arrives, after you get a good SEO position, you want them to take certain actions, call, fill out a lead form, whatever. Be very descriptive in your copy and describe what it is that you're trying to get across, whether it's about a product. So if it's about a product or a service or a solution, don't just talk about the product or service or solution. Talk about what the problems were that you're addressing. So again, that allows you to weave in some of those keywords and keyword phrases that were sort of the problem-solution